This is an example of speech.
All our history embroiled in wars and deep.
Welcome to Tell Me What to Think, a free from oversight and free of charge, thoughtfully improvised, expletive deleted, details expanded, whistle blowhard evergreen topical heat wave of a weekly conversation turned podcast in which we discuss politics, global affairs, current events, music, literature, social media, and anything else that bubbles up from the unmoderated comment section in our brains. We urge you to join us and tell us what you think. I'm Peter Elbro. You can contact me on Twitter at BloatedNemesis, and I have with me, as always and forever, Charles Minnick, who is on Twitter at green_weird, which is WYRD. This episode, we have our weekly intro segment, Week Thoughts, about arranging diplomatic talks with rogue actors. And we don't mean Nick Cage. And musings on the HPSCI declared no collusion. A look at opioid-related issues in our beloved Wisconsin. A hip-hop test drive of Apathy's new drop, The Widow's Son. And an addendum to our continuing look at rotten cabinetry. Prepare to get royally revolutionary. This is Tell Me What to Think. Time to get on our soap pod and tell you what to think. Now for some weak thoughts.
All men thus reduced to fleas, so fucking just do whatever you please for the night commuters in Ugandans, the poor crap babies in Atlanta, the continent, the trans right.
Welcome to Tell Me What to Think, to Weak Thoughts. Remember to do all of those things with every other podcast that you do.
Like,
Rates
subscribe,
and
comment,
subscribes, and comment. And,
just generally
emails.
digitally stalk.
Yeah. Remember to digitally stalk us. It helps out with the podcast.
It makes people seem interested in us.
It really helps people find it once they find it in case law. All right, so I was telling you earlier, I've barely been paying attention to the news because baseball is heating up, so I'm playing baseball video games and watching spring training games that are totally meaningless with half the players that won't even see the majors this year, which is much better than the news cycle.
Yeah, it's moving so fast anymore, it's hard to know what to follow.
Yeah.
I mean, just this morning, when I woke up, I thought Rex Tillerson was still Secretary of State.
Yeah, I saw Rex Tillerson out, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. We have our first gay Secretary of State.
No.
No. So, yeah, I wanted to... We'll get to Tillerson when we talk about some other cabinet people. But I think then the day before, 2 days ago, if I recall, what's his name? Nunez and the other Republicans on the House Permanent Select Committee declared no collusion and the investigation's over.
Dun, 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 dun. I'm surprised they didn't hold a parade.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what maybe that's what Trump's parade will be about. The no collusion parade, no collusion day. Oh, I gotta tweet that at him. He just hasn't thought of that one yet.
Yeah. Might as well call it Patriotism Day.
Yeah, his definition of patriotism is totally self-serving politically. Like he thinks you can't spell patriot without Trump. Right? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the Democrats on that committee are Schiff, mainly, are pretty pissed about this. Even hinted that they're still going to be doing some sort of investigation.
I mean, might as well keep the staffers occupied.
Yeah. We hired all these people. There was some, disagreement. Well, maybe not disagreement's the right word. Discrepancy in what I'm hearing, which is
Paul Ryan and the Republicans are like, all right, we're done investigating Trump Russia. Now we just have to do some sort of investigation on how to protect the 2018 midterms.
Right, and there was some noise about paper ballots and like some bill that apparently authorized $400 million to secure the elections or something along those lines, but I don't think it's getting voted on.
It was lobbied for by like Kimberly Clark or something.
Jennifer Cohn.
Well, I was saying the paper industry.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only way things get done, right?
Jennifer Cohn is just an insider for the paper industry. Sorry, I know she's not. It's just funny to think of it.
Yeah. No, that would be a great way. I mean, I think the cynical take on that is that would also hurt domestic election meddling. That would hurt our domestic election meddling industry.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, look what they do in Waukesha and Racine. If they don't like your vote, they just don't count it. Like, how many boxes were just not counted in that last election in Racine? It probably, that county alone would have swayed the election to Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin if they had just been counted.
Yeah. Well, and in at least a couple of the Walker elections, there was questionable behavior out of Waukesha, which is what you're referring to.
Oh, what's her name?
Yeah, I won't be able to remember it.
Kathy Nichols.
Nice.
God, yeah, one of the most detestable Wisconsinites.
So this House committee says they're going to be working on helping the 2018, preventing blah, blah, blah. The only thing is that the Democrats all seem convinced that that's not what they're doing. And I generally don't want to take Republicans at face value, but I do kind of think that the Democrats are in a little bit of a bind here because the Republicans are saying, hey, we're just not investigating Trump anymore, but we're all about helping the midterms. And the Democrats are saying, they're just going to let the midterms be hacked and let it all happen again. And I don't know. It doesn't...
I mean, it's tough to say. We still haven't found out the real facts behind 2016 to determine, were the Republicans, involved? And the sad thing is that Mueller's investigation at best is probably going to take at least another year, so after the midterm elections are already over and we're just finding out the facts. I mean, it's not like these troll farms and interested parties aren't going to be any less interested because in this election, right?
Yeah, I mean, he may put out some, indictments about certain groups like he has, but I don't think it's going to be any all-encompassing.
Yeah, there's not going to be any trial anytime soon.
Yeah. And I don't think he'll have a final report before the midterms. I would be surprised, at least, personally.
I mean, it really speaks to what Jared was doing as role of digital manager for the campaign. If they were using, huge Russian data sets and troll farms to accomplish propaganda and other information warfare, which seems to be what they're implying, but I don't know. Putin doesn't seem nervous. He had an interview this past week where he was like, I don't know. I just want this whole thing to go away because this had nothing to do with my government. And, you might not be wrong. Maybe fucking the Trump campaign found some oligarchs with, vague ties to the Kremlin, because they all have them, and then they used their resources to accomplish what people in New York and in Moscow, too, wanted to have happen. I mean, we don't even know that Putin was directly involved, and I'm not going to believe it until I see it. I mean, admittedly, he's an intelligence officer, so he specializes in working indirectly, but I don't know. There are probably better uses of his time.
I don't know. I'm not so sure there are better uses of his time, but maybe. But I don't know. Okay. So, first of all, do you think that they would, the Russian angle on this, those people, do you think that they would do it if they thought Putin didn't want them to? Like, is it sort of like an unsaid approval?
I don't think there's that much unanimity in Russia. I mean, Putin uses, like, strong arms and, like, certain people to keep everybody in line, but there's still a relatively free and open internet over there, so there is opposition. And maybe these fucking oligarchs just wanted to be able to shop on Michigan Avenue and in New York.
Well, I mean, yeah, it would be in their interest. I mean, to not have these sanctions.
Right? Trump's, remember with the whole big cover-up and the Air Force One when Trump basically dictated the response? It's like, oh, it was about the Magnitsky sanctions, which is keeping all of those oligarchs from being able to access whatever money they have over here and, you know, visiting allegedly the best places in the world.
Yeah, I mean, allegedly, though, according to, I believe, Bill Browder, who's behind the Magnitsky Act, Putin has a financial interest in all of those people's companies and fortunes.
Sure.
And so, I mean, if it affects them, it affects him. I mean, I think...
But it's not like they're any less rich. It's just that they can't get access to the American market as much as they want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, America's still a place where you can buy a lot of the best things and can make even more money.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they won't be able to invest money in Wall Street either, which is really where you can make some money, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's maybe a little bit of a red herring as to if Putin ordered it or, you know, like, it doesn't really change what happened and that there were foreign actors doing whatever they did. Which is still the important part, is who did it and what did they do?
Who were they doing
the
it
why
with?
of it. And who are your co-conspirators? So, anyway, I don't know. I just...
You just had to dive into those weeds a second.
Well, yeah, and I just like how we can talk for 10 minutes about all these unanswered questions, and Republicans are sitting here saying, nope, no fire, no smoke,
No
nothing.
collusion.
That's not smoke, that's just steam.
That's just fog. It'll boil off. It's like we're not near water, sir.
And so, speaking of foreign relations, the other thing I wanted to ask about is, okay, so big news this past week. The Trump administration agreed to a sit-down with Kim Jong-un with no preconditions, and then they
walked that back as fast as they could.
Said, there has to be some, yeah. And so, I think it's way too much speculation to sit here and for us to babble on about what we think Trump would do in that meeting. I mean, no one has fucking high hopes for that. All the people who pretend to have high hopes are just totally deluded.
He's going to go in unprepared and, like, unread, so he'll just go in there and... it'd be embarrassing.
It's like a huge track record. I mean, why do we... he's, like, able to make people think he's a wild card, and he's not even a fucking wild card. People act surprised. Like, the speech... I'm getting way off topic, but, like, the speech he gave in Pennsylvania... People are, like, all up in arms. Oh, I can't believe a president's doing and saying these things. It's the same shit he always does and says.
It's just all stream of consciousness. It's like they put him up there for about an hour and a half, and it makes the common people like him for some reason.
Some of the
media never covers people walking out of his damn rallies. Yeah,
or how about just stop covering
altogether?
Yeah. Or like
he doesn't say anything
know?
substantive, and he contradicts himself like with no warning or consideration. So whatever.
Yeah. So anyway, what I was curious about is, so there was this week process to announce this sit down, this meeting, these talks between the two leaders, and it was. So first, I want to ask, what is learned and gained from normally in this process before that announcement would happen or not happen?
Typically, countries would have been like, even if it's just like the attaches at the United Nations, like having a cup of coffee and discussing things in vague terms, there would be some kind of contact before this. And this has been a North Korean policy aim for decades.
Wanting to have...
Yeah, progress negotiations and having a direct face-to-face meeting.
Okay, so, and then I wanted to get to that. So first we'll just say, I'll ask specifically why do they want that? Or why have they wanted that?
Well, it gives them some measure of domestic political capital, like their program is working if the Americans are willing to sit down.
Yeah, I suppose.
And
that's
they want
self-fulfilling.
They need to end the war. I mean, it's kind of the reason that they've never had a decent economy is because they've always, for the past 50 years, more now, almost 70 years, they've been continuously on a war footing. Which is terrible for their economy. They can't get anything done. People are backwards. They're subject to the rains, or the generosity of the rains to feed their own people. So that's not a good position to manage your public policy from.
So they hope to get out of this an end to the war, maybe even unification somehow, maybe even short term, some food concessions.
No, they need oil right now and fuel. All those
fuel,
energy sanctions.
So now I want to kind of just talk, though, about rogue states in general. There was this... I keep hearing this line repeated by, foreign policy talking heads. And this legitimizes Kim Jong-un. And I don't think they mean, to his domestic crowd. I don't think that's what they're talking about, on the world stage.
Well, and in the United States specifically.
Okay. Why? I don't quite understand that. So if Trump sits down with Kim Jong-un and there's, it doesn't even necessarily have to be, all smiles and, photo ops, but however it would look, whatever. Why does that elevate them?
This is just a common talking point. It doesn't really mean anything because
that's what I was suspecting. That's why I'm asking.
It's not like we pull our embassies out of the capitals of Equatorial Guinea or any other of these other terrible places in the world. If it really legitimized them to have an embassy there, do you think the Swedes would have their embassy in Pyongyang still? I think it's, I'm pretty sure it's the Swedish who run an American interests desk there, too, for our consular affairs.
Yeah. I think that's correct. So, why can't we... I mean, so it's been brought up in the past week by, in my opinion, stupid liberal commentators that are well, maybe this is a good thing, and, hey, Barack Obama said he'd sit down with him, which, by the way, he didn't. But I don't think that's neither here nor there. I agree with the sentiment of why not sit down with anyone. and I don't really understand the argument against it, given, each individual situation will maybe have some sort of context to it that might allow for it to happen or not.
Yeah, there's still a lot of things that are up in the air about whether or not this meeting will ever be held, but the people's rejection of it, to my mind, is kind of the national security state defending itself. There's no bad reason to sit down and speak with the leadership of North Korea, even if it's just purely technical talks. Having a relatively, or not necessarily a normal relationship, but having a relationship allows for lots of other possibilities. Like, if we could put humanitarians on the ground and food supplies, we can, at least somewhat move the needle among the public about what America is or is not doing. If we could put people in there, then that means, like, teachers or even the Peace Corps. Well, that means we could potentially put intelligence assets in North Korea. Without having these options, we can't know enough to know what to do.
Mm-hmm. So when you say the national security, are you saying more like, maybe not necessarily active military, remember, but you mean like the alternative being military,
the interests action. Of the national security complex, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. Like if all of a sudden peace breaks out in Korea, that suddenly leaves them without a huge gaping hole in their growth projections.
But I'm sure I would think
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that kind of is why they fired Rex Tillerson. I mean, I posted about it on Twitter this morning, that minute or so of Trump, the Great Orange, explaining, why does he always talk... Well, anyways. But he was explaining why he fired Tillerson. It was basically because Tillerson wouldn't let him go to war with Iran. He almost literally said that word for word. So... They need and or want a war. It's kind of the reason they elected Trump.
Yeah. Well, not popularly elected, but point taken. Okay, so I think that pretty much. I think just the only, based on what you're saying, the intelligence community, I would think, would want a diplomatic relationship.
Yeah, you would,
right?
You would think, but
I would think.
From what I've been reading, it's especially after 9/11, the community and intelligence community suddenly realized that they could do, kinetic actions. So they've been becoming militarized, and you get fucking people who are actively involved in torture leading the goddamn CIA.